Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Extravaganza. It's Dusty and Huss back with you once again. As always, the Lock Shop's Fantasy Football Extravaganza presented to you by our wonderful partners at Coolbet. If you've not yet signed up for an account, make sure you do so today. Use the bonus code LOCKSHOP when you sign up. You get a 100% deposit bonus on your initial deposit up to $200. Huss, we'll get to fantasy here, obviously. What'd you make of the Monday Nighter?
Well, it was as expected, sort of, certainly no Picasso. That was a tight game. I was impressed with the Cowboys. I mean, I got to say, impressed with the Cowboys offense
for sure.
Without Dak Prescott. And oh my God, yeah, they really did a number on it. Although loved our picks. We got the Cooper Rush over. You were on the Saquon. I actually went. I know we talked yesterday at the end of the program. You were on the over number receptions. I went over on the receiving yards.
Perfect.
So I didn't sweat that one. I didn't sweat that one quite as much because he had 34 in his first two catches. But he ended up getting it done. And as I said, thank God we got in on the under at 39.5 because that number dropped throughout the day as low as 38. And of course, it ended on 39. I cannot believe how good these damn odds makers are, but they were right sniffing around it. There was the potential for the middle. I mean, if you did get under at 39.5 or 40 early and then hit the over, I mean, you could have spotted it right in the middle. It doesn't happen too often, but that was the way that it went. But anyways, I'm glad that we got that. I think this Thursday nighter should be a little more exciting than the Monday nighter we had, although it's a relatively close game. I can't complain.
Yeah, no, I mean, in the end, it was a game that was still on the line in the fourth quarter, so I think you have to take that. I mean, for the Giants-Cowboys, probably maybe even a little bit better than we expected that game to be last night. The Thursday nighter, obviously, on Thursday, we'll have our Thursday night football betting preview, so be ready for that right around the same time on Thursday to get you ready for a huge game between the Dolphins and the Bengals. From a fantasy perspective, Huss, how'd things go for you this weekend, buddy? Anything jump off the page for you? I know I picked up a win in the Fantasy Football Extravaganza Listener League. I now sit at 2-1 on the season. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I'm 2-1 as well, but I'm coming off an absolute ass kicking. I lost by as I said, I went up against the Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack. It was not a good day to have those guys in your opponents. Wow, what can you say about Lamar? He is just rolling. I was mediocre. I'm big into Justin Jefferson wherever I could get him, and that was a very, very quiet day, shockingly, against the Detroit Lions, although the Vikings came back and got that win. So it wasn't quite as good as the amazing start that I had right now, but a few guys are coming around, and it certainly is going to make for an interesting waiver wire week because I think there's a number of guys that sort of stepped up and really showed they are premier targets in their offense, and many of them are available when people are going to the wire this week.
Yeah, and that's what we're definitely going to get into. Let's quickly just take a look at some of the key injuries popping up over the weekend. Mac Jones with New England looks like he's going to be out for a little bit with that high ankle sprain. Dalvin Cook saying they might just kind of throw him in a sling, and they're hoping they can roll him out here overseas against the Saints this week. So that impacts any Alexander Madison owners or possibly where your priority is for Madison on a waiver wire if he's out there. Montgomery left. Herbert, massive week. We're going to get into that for him. He was kind of just waiting for his opportunity. Those were some of the bigger ones. Garrett Wilson left that game for the Jets, did come back, dealing with a little bit of a rib issue as well. But, Haas, I guess Chicago Bears backfield, probably the big one as far as injury discussions go here.
Well, especially because they don't let Justin Fields throw the football.
Yeah.
Like, I was looking at a graph, and I apologize to whoever put this out, but they essentially track the pass attempts of every quarterback for every team for each week of this season. And the three lowest totals in the league are Justin Fields, and Justin Fields. And I'm not sure whether they just don't think that he can do it or listen, I think
that's bizarre usage for sure.
The evidence is suggesting that they're not sure about this guy. I'm not sure, but bottom line is they're going to run the football quite a bit. And with Montgomery out, Khalil Herbert stepped up, had a big
great
game against the Houston Texans. And I think that people will be unrolling the bankroll of the FAAB, the free agent acquisition budget this week for him. He'll be number one on the list, I think, in most cases. Because listen, he showed that he's capable of doing it. And this could be the start of a changing of the guard. This happens a few times each and every year. A guy gets hurt.
It's true.
It's been around for a little while. A younger guy comes in, steps up, takes the job. And it wouldn't at all surprise me if Khalil Herbert is that guy in Chicago.
Yeah, it would not surprise me either. The other one, DeAndre Swift, looks like he might miss a little bit of time, maybe a couple of weeks up to the bye week. Jamal Williams was already carrying some standalone value anyway, so he's probably not available on the waiver wire in a ton of your leagues, but you definitely check for him as well. Let's transition right into the waiver wire this week, Huss. We each got a few targets that we think you should go out and either pick up and start or stash for a few weeks, depending on current injury situations with current clubs. So who do you like, buddy? Who do you got this week? Who jumps off the page for you?
I mean, Khalil Herbert right off the bat. Yeah. I mean, this to me is the clear number one, at least at the running back position. Well into 3 digits of rushing yards, a ton of touches, and we'll see what happens with David Montgomery, but there's a good chance he could miss a few weeks. And if that is the case, as I just kind of laid out, Khalil Herbert will have the chance to be that guy. And the Bears don't throw the football, so you can pretty much rest assured that he's going to be getting a ton of touches, a ton of activity. And listen, that's what you want when you're putting a guy in your starting lineup. He will be a guy that, as I said, people will be unloading that FAAB number to try to get on their roster. So to me, Khalil Herbert, a clear guy. You mentioned Alexander Madison. I would have Madison and Williams in Detroit are guys that, for the most part, I think are picked up in most leagues. If for whatever reason they're available, jump on them. But otherwise, I mean, those are natural handcuffs. I mean, if you have Swift in a league, so I had Williams, it was pissing me off that he kept on getting all the goal line work. But this is exactly why you handcuff guys, because when you lose one of them, the other guy becomes the clear go-to guy with increased usage. And then when it comes to receivers, there was a number of receivers. I mean, Mac Hollins had a big game. I didn't even know who he was, but, put him in a couple DK lineups, and he was $3,300 and ended up getting 32 points. But the guy to me that stands out, that is unowned in most leagues, is Zay Jones in Jacksonville. Spent a lot of time talking about Christian Kirk, and he's been awesome so far this year. But Doug Peterson has created a new look Jags offense that is balling out right now. Just ask the LA Chargers. They romped all over them at SoFi, even with Justin Herbert. Now, the Chargers are a different story. They've had a devastating week, some major injuries that I think are going to be a big setback for them. But Jacksonville's one of been the great stories of the year so far. Pounded Indy at home, crushed Chargers. And they've got a big one this week going up against Doug Peterson's old team, the Philadelphia Eagles.
What a game.
Meantime, if you do need a receiver, Zay Jones in Jacksonville. Monster game, I believe, was targeted 11 times by Trevor Lawrence. He's obviously earned the trust of the young quarterback and the OC right now. And he's a guy that if you have the room and you have the need, you should be running to the waiver wire to get on your roster.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm in that 116 team league, and the Herberts and the Williams, those guys are long gone. They would never be available on the waiver wire. But Zay Jones is somehow. I don't know who dropped him in the last couple of weeks, and after week 1, everybody goes crazy. I didn't, and it's a rolling waiver wire, right? So in the first 2 weeks, I've worked myself up to either the number 1 or number 2 spot. I haven't put in a claim. I've been waiting for, especially in a deep league like that, I've been waiting for a week like this one. I will 100% be using my waiver claim this week on Zay Jones, because a lot of talk going into this season was, they go out, they bring in Christian Kirk. What's Christian Kirk going to be able to do? He really wasn't able to click in Arizona with Kyler Murray. Well, Christian Kirk has emerged as legit wide receiver 1 this year for Trevor Lawrence. And then there was other discussions about, well, who else is who's going to be there besides Christian Kirk? And Zay Jones, who's shown flashes in some different stops along the way, this looks like it's his job right now. I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence could rely very heavily on both of those guys consistently throughout the season. So this is one of those ones. If you have been waiting on your waiver wire and you've been trying to kind of hoard that top spot, I think Zay Jones, especially if you need a wide receiver, maybe even if you don't, I think this might be the time to pull the trigger on him.
Yeah, for sure. He had sort of a breakout season last year with the Raiders, and I think went to Jacksonville knowing that there was a real opportunity for him to step up and become a starter. I mean, many of us, myself included, thought that Marvin Jones, the veteran, would probably be that guy in the 1-2, and Zay Jones might get some slot duty. He's basically turned into WR2 right now, certainly by target share. And he's making things happen right now. And the Jags offensively are rolling.
Yes, they are.
You could do a lot worse than have a guy that's getting passes from Trevor Lawrence right now. Their defense still isn't that good. They're going to need to continue to score points, albeit I know they just gave up 10 on the road against the Chargers. I can't wait for this Jacksonville-Philly game. I would not have thought that would have been one of the games I was most looking forward to a couple of weeks. But that, in fact, is one of the games of the week coming up. And as we mentioned, big revenge game narrative with Doug Peterson going back to where he won the Super Bowl but had a falling out with the owner and is now down in Florida.
Bills-Ravens this week, another huge game. That should be great. Bills looking to bounce back. Ravens looking to kind of keep rolling after that bounce-back win that they had last week. And then you got a really good Thursday night or two. So there's some excellent games on the schedule. Just a few other waiver wire guys for me. Samaje Perine would be a guy that you're probably going to stash in a situation here. Joe Mixon a little bit banged up. Perine got some run this past week. And, if Mixon's not around, Perine might be a 3-down back type of guy. So Samaje Perine, stash him and see how that one plays out. Craig Reynolds, running back in Detroit. You know they like to use 2 running backs. If DeAndre Swift is out, I would assume Jamal Williams gets the bulk of that workload, but Reynolds is another name there. And then 2 other guys. This guy's a good stash considering the 2 guys he's playing against or playing behind. And there's Keenan Allen and there's Mike Williams. Keenan Allen's already been banged up this season. Mike Williams will be injured at some point this season. And the Canadian, Josh Palmer, hit us on that touchdown a couple Thursday nights ago, which was great. This past week, without Keenan Allen, 9 targets, 6 catches, 99 yards. So, you're not going to carry a ton of value when both of those guys are healthy. But I'm telling you, both of those guys aren't going to be healthy a lot at the same time this year. So I think Palmer's a good stash that you can flex when one of those 2 guys are out. And then Romeo Doubs is an interesting one because a lot of people – like I've got him stashed on like 4 benches already because I drafted him late in a bunch of drafts, and it was for this exact reason, right? Sammy Watkins gets hurt because that's what Sammy Watkins does. Christian Watson was inactive this past weekend, and there were a ton of targets. He was the first rookie since 2018 to catch a touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers, and all this guy needed to do was win Aaron Rodgers' confidence, and there's a window open to maybe be the number 1 guy there this year. I think I was looking a little bit earlier on. I think he's available in like 60% of ESPN league still. So, I mean, maybe a guy you can even flex right away, but definitely stash him on the bench and see how that relationship continues to develop, I would think.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is going to get his. I mean, he will get touchdown passes. He will be putting up yards. He hasn't had any monster games yet. Certainly helped out by Alan Lazard coming back, who I think probably would be the de facto number 1 just based on his time with Green Bay beforehand. But Romeo Doubs has exactly been, he's doing exactly what he needs to do. Catch the ball when Aaron Rodgers throws it to him, make a few plays. He did that on the weekend, and I think he'll continue to have a bigger role in this offense as, he's able to develop that chemistry, especially, as you mentioned, Sammy Watkins, who, I mean, that's one guy you cannot count on to be healthy, and Christian Watson, who was the higher touted rookie coming in, has had some injury problems and has had a tough time getting on the field.
All right, I think that kind of covers us for waiver wire. You got anybody else that jumps off the page here? I think we kind of hit all the main targets this week. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's some other guys we mentioned that probably are not available in many leagues, but pretty clear that Herbert, Zay Jones, and a couple of then Doubs, if you're able to get on them, can really help you at the wide receiver position. One guy I will throw out, and I guess this is maybe a bit of a transition into the starts of the week. And this is a guy I sort of have as a tight end start of the week, but it's more a cheap DraftKings play. But Ian Thomas from Carolina was targeted 3 times last week, is getting a little bit more work in that Carolina offense. And they're going up against the Arizona Cardinals, who are by far the worst team in the National Football League going up against tight ends.
And now, they always have been, too.
Totally. I mean, in a regular 12-team league, I mean, there's probably another guy that might be a little safer, but if you've got an issue with your tight end this week for whatever reason, I don't mind that guy for a spot start, although I wouldn't be making him my number 1 priority pick or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair way to summarize that, and it is a good way to transition over to our starts of the week. And it's funny because there's one quarterback that we both kind of like, and we got some other guys as well. So Huss, lay it out for me. Where are you going for your start of the week at the quarterback position?
Well, to be honest, I couldn't decide between the two guys playing each other in that Philly-Jacksonville game. I mean, I don't know what we can say about Hurts. He has been everything that an Eagles fan could have hoped for and more so far. I mean, the way that he's been efficiently throwing the football and moving it and taking care of the football, maybe more importantly than anything, on top of the way he's been running the ball, has made him an absolute fantasy stud. I mean, if Lamar Jackson had not been doing what he's done the last couple of weeks, this is all we'd be talking about right now. So listen, Hurts, I think, is in a perfect spot for another monster week. But I'll be honest, Trevor Lawrence on the other side of the football field right now, I think absolutely merits some consideration for start of the week. Now, in most cases, if you've got Lawrence on your team, he's maybe your backup. And, you had a Mahomes or you had Herbert or, one of those top quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence is barging into that conversation where, at least fantasy-wise, he's as startable as just about anybody else. I love this game from a DraftKings stack perspective. I could see this game being a big, big total, tons of points. And as I said, Doug Peterson's he'll be pulling out all the stops to try to beat his old team. And I think as we've seen so far, if you want to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, you better put up some points because they're coming as well. So I think both of those quarterbacks would be great selections, whether you're doing DraftKings. If you have one of them in your lineup, get them in there. And I think many of the skill position players in that game ball out as well. So if you're looking to really focus on one game with a big DraftKings stack, that's where I'm starting, Philly and Jacksonville this week. And I love both quarterbacks.
I like the way things are trending for Trevor Lawrence. He was like, I got two guys too. Trevor Lawrence was one of them. I think his average consensus week 4 rating is like 16 among quarterbacks over at Fantasy Pros, which I think is selling him a little bit low considering what this game script could look like and how he has looked as he continues to settle in. 14 fantasy points in week 1, 18 fantasy points in week 2, 25 fantasy points in week 3 as he starts to gel with the receivers, get used to that offense in Jacksonville as well. And this should be a high. I think the total on this game's 48. I saw it today at 48. I'm not too sure if it's still sitting there, but I mean, that's an overplay for sure. You might want to hop on it right now, actually, because that's a line that might move up throughout the week. Let me double check on, let me see what it is. I don't want to give out some false information here. Let's just see
48.5 right now.
48.5. So, I mean, that's a game that I really like the over in with those two clubs going at it. But Trevor Lawrence is such a fascinating study because I've got him on a bunch of benches in leagues where I drafted Aaron Rodgers, in leagues where I drafted Tom Brady. I just like, you know what? If these guys, if I drafted a Derek Carr, I usually threw a Trevor Lawrence in there. I've got him in a few dynasty leagues as well. And it's starting to pay off a little bit for Trevor Lawrence. And look, I know some of you might be like, well, he's not a running quarterback. Yeah, but he's a first overall pick who is ridiculously talented and is being unleashed in a new offense. And you have to forget everything you saw last year. And the first 3 games this year, buddy, looked pretty damn good. So I like Trevor Lawrence as a guy that I just looked it up. His ownership percentage on ESPN leagues right now is just 50%. So this is also a waiver wire target for you this week if you want, because he's only owned in half the leagues right now. Now there's 7 or 8 quarterbacks that you're not going to replace him with. But outside of that, man, I think Trevor Lawrence deserves some consideration.
Oh, me too. I mean, he's barging into the top 10 from my perspective for fantasy going forward. And listen, I know he's not your prototypical running quarterback, but he can run. Hell, last year he ran quite a bit because he was running for his life more often than not. A little bit better of a situation right now with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but there's going to be some fireworks from that team. And I'm really looking to see what he can do, and especially they can do going into his coach's old stomping grounds this weekend.
My official start of the week, like I said, I like Trevor Lawrence this week. If you want to make him your start of the week, I'm totally fine with that. But I feel like there's a game coming here for Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray is due for a big one. Gets Carolina on the road this week. Kyler Murray hasn't been a bust by any stretch of the imagination, but Kyler Murray has the skill set where you don't think at Lamar's level, but you can think at Jalen Hurts' level as far as fantasy production goes, and he hasn't got there just yet. This week he gets the Carolina Panthers. I look at what Carolina has faced so far at the quarterback position, and they've gone up against Brissett, Daniel Jones, and a banged-up Jameis Winston. So this should be a different level for Kyler Murray, I think. You would hope. If Kyler Murray doesn't have a nice week this week, then I start to worry what the hell's going on there a little bit for him rest of season. So I'm expecting a big game from Kyler Murray, so I'll make him officially my starter of the week. I think he needs a big game, and I think the schedule kind of sets it up that way at the quarterback position for Kyler Murray. What else you got, Huss?
Well, let's go to the running back position. And I'm really intrigued by this Cleveland-Atlanta game. Atlanta, shout out, big win in Seattle on the weekend, helped the picks. But to me, Nick Chubb has the potential of maybe running away with the rushing title this year. The amount that Cleveland runs the football behind that offensive line, and even with Kareem Hunt in there, I mean, we saw it against a pretty darn good Steelers team, albeit without TJ Watt, and the way Nick Chubb ran amok. And I expect it to happen again this week. Now, again, if you've got Nick Chubb on your fantasy team, you're starting him, period. I mean, he's must start. But I don't even mind paying up for him in a 1 week DFS standpoint for this week, because I think he gets into the end zone. I think he's well over 100 yards, and I think he pads his lead or maybe extends it over some of the other running backs that, were picked ahead of him at the beginning of the year. On a cheaper note, and a guy that might be in the mix on your team as a 2 or a 3 is Dameon Pierce in Houston. And it didn't take long for Pierce to really emerge as the number 1 guy. I know there was a lot of steam on him going into week 1, and then that cooled off a little bit. They gave Rex Burkhead a lot of work. He had more touches in week 1. But Pierce is taking over that job right now. Had a big game last week. Cashed our prop and got in for his first NFL touchdown. And going forward for Lovie Smith, I think that as long as he feels he can trust the rookie, they are going to ride him right now. So he'd be a great guy to look at potentially even acquiring in a trade from someone in your league if they've got some surplus at the running back position. Because I think people are sleeping on Houston a little bit. They're not going to be a playoff team or anything like that, but we've seen how tough they've played teams so far this year. They probably should have won that game. I mean, it was 20-all, and Davis Mills has the ball at the end of the game, throws a pick, and Chicago ends up throwing the kick in the winning field goal. But they're coming around a little bit, and they, offensively are going to go through a real select few players, and Dameon Pierce is now that guy. I believe he's 5,600 on DraftKings, so I really like him as a DFS play as well. And if you've got him in your lineup, he'll be looking good as a starter for week 4.
I'm actually going to go to a running back in that game that Dameon Pierce is playing in, and I'm going to go with Austin Eckler in a huge get-right spot for the Chargers as far as Austin Eckler goes. I mean, this is a guy who was drafted the top 5 in fantasy this past season. His points so far, and it's because he's been getting heavy targets, but still, 11.2 points in week 1, not good enough for a guy that you're drafting that high. 18.4 points in week 2. You pretty much expect that to be his average production for the year. And then this past game in which they got crushed, he carried the ball 4 times. Had 8 catches on 8 targets, 13.3 points. But in 3 games so far this year, Austin Eckler has carried the ball 14 times, and 4 times. And his YPC right now, yards per carry, 2.6, 2.8, and 1.3. Like, disastrous. He's not even averaging 3 yards per carry for the Chargers right now. And yeah, they're getting involved in the passing game, and because of that, his fantasy floor is low. But Austin Eckler needs to step up and have a game here, and I think the stage is set to do it against Houston. So I'm going to make Austin Eckler, which I would have never thought would have been a ballsy play 4 weeks into the season. But with what's happened so far, I'm kind of going to go on a little bit of a limb here and say Austin Eckler delivers for all of you who took him in the top 5 this year.
Well, and you'll recall when I was doing the show out in Vegas over the summer, got a chance to meet and hang out a little bit with Austin Eckler at the D in Vegas. And he's a guy who's acutely aware of the importance of fantasy football and his spot in the fantasy world. So if there's any player that knows that not only does he and his team need a big game, but his owners need a big game from him, I would suggest it's Austin Eckler. So I do like that. The one thing that concerns me about them is just the state of their offensive line right now. Sounds like Rashawn Slater's out for the year. They weren't that deep, the right tackle position to begin with. And as we've seen, Justin Herbert's been getting hit, and now the injuries are piling up on both sides of the football for the Chargers. So this is an absolute must win for LA. And I think they also need to get some of those big weapons that we were so excited about what they could do this year, running, and Austin Eckler at the top of that list for LAC.
All right, who do you like a wide receiver this week, buddy?
You know what? I'm going to go with Chris Olave actually overseas in the 8:30 a.m. game. Olave has very quickly become, well, listen, this might be a little much to compare him to Michael Thomas a few years ago with the Saints, but man, he is just a
Hey, Huss, reconnect quickly. I lost your audio connection. Just reconnect here as he lays out the case for Chris Olave. And we'll probably get to that game on Friday, I guess, are their best bets, because that Saints-Vikings game is a very interesting one. I don't know if I love the Saints in that spot, but the Vikings will be an interesting one. There, we got you back, Huss?
Yeah.
There you go. Yep.
Listen, I think that Olave's just turned into a target machine, and I actually really like this matchup. For whatever reason, the Vikings, were down 14. They came back. They were very fortunate to win that football game against the Detroit Lions. I think that they'll be much better this week. It's a little weird. It's the early start with it being over in London. But I think where the Saints are right now, they know that they're going to need to score some points. Minnesota's going to do the same. So I don't think anything's changing anytime soon with Chris Olave seeing a ton of pigskins thrown his way. And I do like the Vikings in this game, and I know we'll get to that a little later on with our full picks. But I think that's going to put them in a situation where they're going to need to throw the ball quite a lot. Alvin Kamara's sort of been up and down so far this year. He's had some
more down than up, yeah.
Olave has turned into the target right now for the New Orleans Saints. So I think he continues his brilliant rookie season overseas with a big game, getting a lot of footballs from a banged-up Jameis Winston.
I'm going to kind of try to put my money where my mouth is on that Kyler Murray pick and stack my starts of the week with Marquise Brown. Through the first 3 weeks, listen to these numbers. Targeted 6 times in week 1, 11 times in week 2, 17 targets in week 3, caught 14 of them. He had 14 catches in week 3 on 17 targets. I'm not even sure if Kyler Murray is throwing the ball in any other direction outside of Marquise Brown. Once again, that matchup I said with Carolina, I like it for the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know if I'm going to dive into it on our spread picks when we get to them on Friday, but I'm going to roll with Kyler Murray. I'm going to roll with Marquise Brown. When we look at some DFS stacks, that could be one. Probably some decent value there because I don't know how much Brown's going to cost you. He's a top 10 wide receiver so far this season. When you get targeted like this, that's a ridiculous target share. So that may be something that you want to consider as well. So I'm gonna roll with. He's not going to get 17 targets again. I'd be shocked if he gets 17 targets again in another game this season. But that was insane last week. Obviously, there's a connection there. We knew there was going to be a connection there when they brought him in, and it looked like maybe just kind of took a couple weeks to sort of get ramped up to full speed ahead. So I'm going to make Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, my start of the week at the wide receiver position, and that brings us to tight ends. Unless you got anything to add on Hollywood.
Well, I'm just going to mention for Brown. These are just DraftKings points, 19.4 per game. And he's a sub $7,000 salary. He's at $6,900, which is a nice number for a guy that's been putting up very nice totals so far this season. And that might change a little bit when DeAndre Hopkins gets back, because we know how good he is and how much chemistry he has got with Kyler Murray. But for the time being right now, it is definitely Hollywood time. As far as the tight ends go, listen, you've got the usual suspects. Darren Waller's got a nice matchup. He's going up against Denver, who are 25th against tight ends so far this year. But with the tight end position being pretty lean, we know who the big guys are. I wanted to get a sort of a deeper dive and a guy that you might be able to put in as a very cheap option in your DraftKings lineup if you're trying to stack some more expensive players. And that's Ian Thomas from the Carolina Panthers. He's only 2,700 in DFS this week, and his game log so far Been targeted 3 times every game. Has had 1 or 2 catches. Hasn't got into the end zone yet. But going up against Arizona, if there's ever a week to take a flyer on a guy less than $3,000 at the tight end position, it's when they are playing the Cardinals. And listen, Baker's had some ups and downs so far. I think he's getting more comfortable with this offense by the week. And this is a perfect opportunity to take advantage of a glaring weakness on the defensive side of the football, and that's the inability to cover tight ends. And I think Ian Thomas, a lot of people maybe haven't heard of him. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets into the end zone. That could be a little tease of a player prop going into this week. But, I've had some success with, listen, if you want to get your Justin Jeffersons or Saquon Barkley, or you want to have, the guys that you really know are going to pop, you need to also have a few low dollar ballers. Mac Hollins was that guy last week at 3,300. And I'll be having some Ian Thomas and some lineups going into this weekend as well from the Panthers against Zona.
Yeah, I keep mine pretty basic. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown might miss some time here. TJ Hawkinson got into the end zone last week after a little bit of a slow start, and he didn't have a huge game either. He just managed to get his first touchdown of the season last week. So if they are missing Amon-Ra St. Brown, or he is banged up, if he does have to miss some time, and I was talking with Tom Pelissero today, and some of the reports have been good, but they might be a little bit extra cautious on Amon-Ra St. Brown. And if that's the case, I mean, in my opinion, TJ Hawkins becomes their number one red zone target at that point, which could certainly help him, probably get him a little bit more involved in the offense overall for a guy who I think a lot of people have been waiting to have a pretty good season. It's been a slow start. Maybe the touchdown gets him going. They get some momentum going there with Jared Goff in that offense. So I'll throw TJ Hawkinson in as my start of the week at the tight end position. It's going to be fun again, buddy. When do we play?
Yeah.
When do we play in the Listener League? When's our week? I just beat Lieutenant Eric in our Nielsen Show League, which was nice. Got to have those bragging rights, right?
My upcoming matchup in the fantasy football. I'm going up against Bronco Nick. So I will look at my team's schedule. Do we have this here?
I'm looking here. Yeah, I'm trying to see. There we are. Week 11, buddy. Week 11.
Week 11. Let's go.
Dusty's Destroyers versus the Golden Boys. Week 11 in the Fantasy Football Extravaganza Listener League.
Quickly, the champ is here, Prosper Pradaniak, who absolutely whooped me. The champ is here is 3-0.
Jeez.
And Dirty Randy also 3-0 so far. So 2 undefeated teams. And then the Golden Boys, Yamandis Meat, 2-1. Blame Canada. Our boy Marshall down to California is 2-1. And Dusty's Destroyers 2-1. The Wilsonators, tough start, 0-3 right now. And Bronco Nick, also 0-3 right now. So I got to give it to Bronco Nick. I don't want to be that first notch in the win column right now. And I need to rebound from getting my ass kicked last week.
All right, that's going to do it for the Week 4 preview of the Fantasy Football Extravaganza. More Lock Shop content coming your way tomorrow. We'll get you ready for a 4-game week in the Canadian Football League as that season starts to heat up down the stretch. So looking forward to that. Huss has been firing along, 60% clip with CFL picks this year. So hopefully another big day tomorrow. And then right back into Thursday Night Football with the Bengals and the Dolphins, which is a big one. Next 2 days are very exciting, buddy. I can't wait.
Great game. Thanks a lot, Dusty.
Yep, see you later, man.